Hi everyone, I'm botanical artist Park. I'm going to paint a pink tulip today. A tulip may look a little simple in shape, but it looks flat sometimes when it is painted. And then it's so important to show a sense of volume. In this video, I'm trying to give a three-dimensional effect by creating highlights on the petals and veining along the curved surface. Let's start of it. Here, the outline is transferred to the watercolor paper. First, lighten the outline with a putty eraser. Now look at the color. I mixed the cobalt violet with a little opera for a violet pink. It will be mostly painted to the halfway with this wash. Please refer to the picture on the left. Start with applying clean water first. While the glaze is still wet, drop in a watery mix of color. Putting in a mix of color, avoiding highlight area. There is a thin highlight on the right side, so be sure to observe it carefully. Now, with a clean damp brush, softens the edges of the color. I'm going to paint clear fine vines in advance. These lines serve as guidelines in the next step. But it's hard to fix it if it's too strong. Be sure to start lightly and then gradually get darker. Glaze again with clean water and apply a slightly stronger mix of color and build layers gradually. Repeat this process a few times. The watery mix will spread quickly on the paper, and then it's especially hard to leave a thin highlight. In the case, while the surface is still wet, sweep up the paint to reveal highlights with a clean damp brush. Repeat these steps until the desired depth of color is reached. Let's watch it for a minute. I finished the left petal halfway through. Let's paint a petal in the middle. Lighten it with a putty eraser before coloring it. Going on with the same way in previous process. This petal has a very thin highlight at the top. Avoiding that area, paint the vines with wet and dry technique. And there are some shadows of both petals in here. Shadow is an important element that brings out the three-dimensional effects. And I'm going to apply a layer of a permanent rosin to make it look a little shadowy between the two petals. In this way, the petals on both sides are relatively looped to expose. Let's paint the petal on the right side. Start by applying clear watercolors and drop in the color mix. There are two lines of highlights on the left side where it's curled up. And leave the white area at the bottom also. Leave a thin highlight line, and next to that leave another soft highlight. Paint along the direction of the vines. Applying another layers of wet on wet for depth of the color. The light comes in from left, so it's a little bit darker on the right side. And if you add more color around the highlights, you can emphasize the highlights a little more. A dry technique with a sharp pointed brush is useful for delicate shadow like this. Now I've painted the whole flower to the halfway stage. It looks like a pink tulip even in this stage. Now I'm going to add a little more depth to the color from now on. This is a Helios purple mixed with a little copper violet. You can use only Helios purple or quinacridone magenta. Strengthen up the color by laying this mixed wash to the area where you need to add depth of color and more vines. As the color changes, it will look darker overall. Relatively, the highlights are also more emphasized. Now it's more three-dimensional. And using a wash mixed with a little permanent violet, painted the shadow part and the dark area on the right. You can use any warm tone violet you have. It looks a little more radiant. Now, as a final step, I'm going to paint delicate vines for details. There are 5 vines around the main clear vines. And watch the vines in the oblique line also. Be careful not to paint too strong. Now putting on the vines that are neatly arranged using sharp pointed brush. Wipe lightly on a paper towel to minimize the amount of paint on the brush. And draw in the veining and the curved surface by dragging the tip of the brush towards right side. Soften the edge of the line with a clear, damp brush. And in the shaded area on the right side, strengthen the color of the vines with another stroke. Draw vines on the right side of the petals in the same way. One more touches in the shaded area. I'm going to show you a close-up of the veining. I've finished drawing the vines. Applying a glazing to soften the lines of vines. On the whole, I think I'm going to paint a little darker on the right side. Then going to paint it a little bit darker to make up for it. And it's done. Today I shared how to paint a tulip in 3 dimensions with 2 techniques, highlights and veining. I hope it will be helpful for your painting, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you for watching.